Good evening. In this week's Parsha, Parshas Mishpatim, the Torah deals with the laws of animals that damage other people's animals or property. If I have an animal that belongs to me, and that animal goes ahead and damages another human being's animal or his property, the Parsha Mishpatim legislates the laws that pertain to these scenarios. And the Chumash, the Torah, makes an important distinction between two types of damage, two categories of an animal that damages another person's animal or property. It's a distinction that comes to be known in halachic terminology as the distinction between shiur tam and shiur muad, which literally means between an innocent bull versus a forewarned bull. Say, for example, you have a domesticated, usually well-behaved dog, but suddenly it goes berserk, and without any preparation or expectation on your part, it suddenly attacks and bites another person's dog in a public space. What's the law? So according to the legislation of this week's parsha, the first three incidents, the Torah says, the owner of the dog pays only for half of the damage. Chatzi nezek. Since it's unusual for the dog to let loose and bite somebody, this is a usually well-behaved animal, the owner of the dog was not expected to be vigilant against it, so therefore he is not deemed completely responsible for the loss, and he splits the loss with the owner of the wounded dog. But this is only true for the first three incidents. After three incidents of such aggression, and the owner has been forewarned about what his animal is doing, now it's established that this animal is of a destructive nature, it is prone to attack, so the owner is expected to guard it, and he's fully responsible for all damages done as a result of his failure to guard it. To put it in the terminology of the Rambam, in Hilchos Niskei Mammon, in the laws of damages to somebody's money or to somebody's property, the Rambam puts it this way: any living animal owned by a person that causes damages, the owner is required to pay for the damage, as the Torah clearly states in Parshas Mishpatim. Yet, here is the distinction in the words of the Rambam. If the animal caused damage through the performance of an act that it performs frequently, and that is its natural habit, for example, an animal eats straw, an animal caused damage with its feet while walking, so these are things, this is her nature, this is how she behaves. In such a case, the owner of the animal is responsible to pay the full amount of the damage to compensate the victim fully, completely. However, if the animal deviated from its ordinary habit and it performed acts that it does not usually perform, and that is how it caused damage, for example, an ox gored or bit another animal, the ox goring, this ox is a domesticated, well-behaved ox, it is unusual for this ox to gore, then the Torah says he pays half of the damage. Since the animal, the bull, deviated from its natural behavior, the owner is responsible to pay chatzi nezek, half. Yet, if this same bull has gored another animal once, twice, and three times, after three times it becomes a shiur hamuad. It leaves its status of a shiur tam, a simple, innocent bull that only deviated from its nature. After three times it's been established that this shiur is prone, it has a proclivity to gore, and since the owner was forewarned, the owner has to be forewarned, so this becomes a shiur hamuad, a shiur that was forewarned. In other words, it is prone to damage in this fashion. Now the owner can say, I didn't expect it, this shouldn't have happened, I didn't think I have to guard it, it's not really my responsibility, it's your bad mazel, what do you want from me? You were warned you had to guard your animal. You did not guard your animal or your bull in this case. You're responsible to fully compensate the victim for his loss. These are known as the halachas of shiur tam and shiur mu'at. How about reorientation? Once your bull or your dog or any other animal went astray, its nature is now aggressive. It's not just a deviant, random occurrence. Rather, we see that this animal actually is aggressive and violent. Can this animal resume its original status of innocence and go back to a shiur tam? So, the Gemara says in Masechta Baba Kama, the Gemara says that it's possible. How is it possible? This can be achieved in one of two ways. Either the owner rigorously trains his animal, disciplines his animal, penalizes his animal, rewards his animal until its disposition is transformed from an aggressor to a restful, tranquil animal. So if the owner really gets on this animal's case, he can train it, refine it, discipline it through all various methods of animal training until it learns its lesson to start behaving and abandon its previous nature. And then once that's been established through the exact criteria that the halacha gives, as the halacha says, if children are playing with the bull and it does not gore, we know that it's not a shiur hamuad, it's back to a shiur tam. It reverts to its original status as a shiur tam, and if it gores afterwards, you have to pay only half, unless it does it again 3 times and you were warned, then it's back to a shiur hamuad. That seems obvious. If it's clearly that he retrained his animal and the animal has been reoriented, there's no reason why to continue to assume it's aggressive and a violent animal. It's like any other bull which is domesticated, which we assume is innocent and will not gore. And thus, if it does gore, the owner is not fully responsible, only partially responsible. But in Masechta Baba Kama we have another option. It is actually an argument between Amirayim and Baba Kama Daf Mem Amud Beis, but the halacha in Rambam Hilchos Niskei Mom Perek Vav, the 6th chapter of these laws, the Rambam gives the verdict according to the opinion of Rav Papa. To quote the Rambam, Shor Shahuad V'Nimkar, a bull, a bull, which became a muad. It was forewarned, the owner of it was forewarned 3 times, and thus after the 3rd time it's been established that this bull is prone to perform these types of damages. This bull, V'Nimkar, it was sold, Oynitin B'Matana, or was given as a gift, Chazar L'Tamusoi, it reverts back to its original status of being a shiur tam. Shaharishus shenishtanis mishanedinoi. The fact that it changed domains, it was transferred from one authority to another authority, changes its din, changes its halacha, changes its status. Again, the Rambam follows the shita, the opinion of Rav Papa, that Rishus Mishana, changing of domains of authority, changes the status of the bull. So practically speaking, if I owned a bull and it gored 3 times, and I have been forewarned, and thus from now on my shiur is considered a shiur hamuad, and if it damages another animal, it gores another animal, I am fully responsible for the loss. And I now sell this animal to my friend, or I give it as a gift to somebody else. The moment that sale has been achieved and the transaction occurred, and the animal went over from me to another owner, it begins with a clean slate. It's no more a shiur hamuad, now we assume it's a shiur tam. And if the animal gores, the new owner is responsible to pay only chatzi nezek, only half the damage. Obviously, if the animal will now gore 3 times, it will become a shiur hamuad the 2nd time. But till that happens, it remains a shiur tam. Now, the logic behind this is extremely difficult to understand. The first method of reorientation is very logical. You retrain your animal slowly but surely until it's been established that its nature has changed. You experiment. You see how it behaves with other animals, how it behaves with people. Fine. But this logic behind the second method of orientation is very difficult to understand. The bull may not even be aware of the transfer of ownership. How do I explain the fact that the very act of selling the animal and transferring it to another domain changes its status? So Rabbeinu Menachem HaMeiri, one of the great Talmudic commentators, gives his explanation to answer this question. When we think about this, the question really must be crystallized even a bit sharper. How does the Rambam again define a shiur hamuat? A bull who does things that it naturally does. Darkei lasos tamid. He naturally does it. And if he does something unusual, but we see that he does this again and again and again, so it's not unusual, it's usual. How does changing ownership of the animal affect the fact that for this animal, this type of behavior became a habit? So the Meiri says in Baba Kama Daf Lamed Tes Amud Aleph, he says, and I quote, Yitzias ha-shiur mirishus l'rishus meshane mazoloi v'tivoi. The bull being transferred from one domain to another domain changes its mazel and changes its nature. That is what the Meiri writes. This itself begs for an explanation. Why? Just because I sold the bull, just because I gave it as a gift, how does the nature of the bull get affected or transformed? How does the mazel of the bull get affected? What is the meaning in the Meiri? The Rebbe once addressed this halacha of Rishus Meshane Rambam. It was on the fourth night of Sukkot, Tovshin Memches, 1987. The shiur Rambam of that day was in Hilchis Niskei Mammon Perek Vav and these halachas. So in his address that night of Sukkot, the fourth night of Sukkot, the Rebbe addressed this halacha and he explained that the logic behind this principle of Rishus Meshana is not something supernatural or some type of gzeres hakos, of some type of decree of the Torah that is super rational. One can say that because the Torah never says so. If the Torah would clearly say, when you sell an animal or you give it as a gift, it leaves its status of shiur hamuat, so you may understand it. You may not understand it. This is what we call a gzeres hakos. It's a decree of the Torah. The Chumash doesn't say it. The Chazal said it. The Chazal established this halacha of Rishus Meshana. So the meaning of this, the Rebbe said, is that the Chazal believe that this is something natural. It's a natural transformation. Why? Because with a new owner comes new patterns of behavior, new schedules, new systems, a new mode of guarding the animal, and that itself the animal is extremely sensitive to, and our rabbis believe that it is very likely or most likely that the animal will change its behavior as well. When it comes from one domain to another domain, every person has his way he runs his life, or her life. The way they run their home, their stable, their schedules, their patterns, how they discipline, and so on and so forth. So the Chazal believed that the fact that the bull became a shiur hamuad was under the authority of the previous owner, who may have been extremely poor in discipline, who may have not controlled the animal well, who may have let the animal go loose, and as a result of that, the animal became a shiur hamuad. The moment it transfers to a new authority, there's a new system, there are new patterns, we assume we give the bull cheskes kashas, we let it begin with a clean slate, now it's a shiur tam. The logic behind this becomes much stronger. The new owner knows that he just purchased a shiur hamuad. The new owner knows that under the previous owner's authority, this shiur became prone to gore. And therefore the new owner is extremely sensitive, making sure, establishing from the first day that his bull knows who's the boss. And his bull won't just be wild and obligate him to compensate all the people who have been damaged and whose property has been damaged. The second owner makes sure the first day to establish his authority and let the bull know who's the boss, so that he shouldn't become impoverished by paying all the bills that he has to incur because of the frivolousness or the violence or the aggressiveness of this new bull. He knows what happened, that most likely the bull wasn't guarded last time. Not only most likely, for sure, it gored 3 times. And therefore he will be even more vigilant and more meticulous and guard it even better. And that itself will teach the bull a lesson. That itself will ingrain in the bull a new sense of discipline, a new sense of fear, and a new type of behavior not to be a gore. And therefore the halacha, sensitive to this reality, assumes that the shiur reverts back to being a shiur tam, and only if it's proven guilty, it gores 3 times, does it become a shiur muad again. The Aruch HaShulchan in Choshen Mishpat, Siman Shin Pei Tesif Yud Ches, puts it in these words. Yesh lahasbir hatam, we can explain the reason of Rishus Meshana. Shema habaylim hachadoshim yatilu olav shmira yiseda. Perhaps the new owners will impose on it an extra vigilance. They will be more vigilant and guard it even more. V'lo yigachayin, and thus it won't gore. The Rebbe is adding to this that the very transferring from one domain to another domain, everything changes. The whole system changes. The whole pattern changes. And what was true before should not be applied to this new authority. An interesting example the Rebbe gives to this is from something else. There's a halacha in the Mishnah, Baba Kama Daf Lamed Zayin. The Rambam brings in Hilchis Niskei Mom and Perek Vav. Muad l'shabbosos einei muad l'meisachayil. A fabulous halacha. Say you have a bull and it gored 3 consecutive Shabbosim. One Shabbos it gored another animal and killed it. Second Shabbos it gored another animal and killed it. Third Shabbos it gored another animal and killed it. Does your bull become a shiur hamuad? Zak the Mishnah, on Shabbos it's a shiur hamuad. From Sunday to Friday it's not a shiur hamuad. If it gores another animal the next Monday, the next Tuesday, it's a shiur tam. It gored 3 times on Shabbos. Since it happened only on Shabbos, we assume on Shabbos it's a shiur hamuad. On Shabbos it's prone to gore. In the middle of the weekdays it's not prone to gore. So if your bull gores the 4th Shabbos, you have to pay full damage. If your bull gores Sunday, 4th time, 5th time, 4th time, 5th time, you don't have to pay full damage. Unless, of course, it gores 3 times in the middle of a weekday. Then it's a shiur hamuad for all days. What's the logic behind this? It doesn't say in Chumash. Why would the Chazal establish in the Mishnah that muad l'shabbosos and a muad l'meisachayil? What's the logic behind this? So there's an argument between Rashi and Tosfos. Rashi, and Baba Kama Lamed Zayin, says a simple idea. L'fishu batel memelacha v'zachet haytiyov. On Shabbos, a Jewish animal doesn't work. When somebody doesn't have a job, he's bored. When somebody doesn't have a job, he can come up with all types of interesting ideas. I mean, we know with people. People who have too much time on their hands get into trouble. They get other people into trouble. One of the worst things for a human being is lack of productivity. If he wakes up in the morning, he doesn't have what to do. Well, he usually doesn't wake up in the morning, he wakes up in the afternoon. That's one of the greatest tragedies with young people who are unmotivated, uninspired. Harbe bataloi, says the Chazal say. When a person is not living a productive life, when they're not maximizing their days and their nights and their hours and their minutes, they can often get into trouble. They can become a shiur hamuad. On Shabbos, the animal is not working. Zacha daitielav, it becomes pompous, it becomes arrogant, it becomes deviant. So the fact that it's a muad on Shabbos Doesn't mean in the weekdays it's a muad. On Shabbos, you can't work a Jewish animal. Jewish animal is mechuyev to rest. Well, it's not an obligation on the animal, it's an obligation on the owner of the animal. So if you're a muad Shabbos, you're not a muad for Yemei HaChag. Tosfos brings from Yerushalmi a different idea. Tosfos says that on Shabbos, the animal looks at all the people he knows and he doesn't recognize them because they're wearing nice clothes. They're wearing different clothes. So he looks at them as strangers, he doesn't recognize them. So therefore, that may have been the reason that he became a shiur hamuad. So therefore, you can't establish the same truth about the weekdays, only Shabbos. According to this principle that we see in Baba Kama elsewhere, the Rebbe says we can have a better explanation behind the words of the Meiri, that the changing of the Rishus changes the very mazel and teva of the animal. Just like we say Shabbos created certain circumstances. There was a certain environment on Shabbos that became a catalyst and almost invited the bull to become a goring bull. Although it is an aberration of its nature and thus after Shabbos it will revert back to its innocent status. We can use the same logic and apply it also to two different owners. The environment around the first owner, the way he ran his life, the way he ran his home, the way he guarded his animal, its structures of the day, its schedules of eating, of sleeping, of hanging around, of grazing and so forth, that itself contributed to it becoming a shiur hamuad. Now it is in a new place, a new situation, totally new circumstances, a new boss, a new home, new patterns, as I said earlier, and therefore we assume that there is a change now in the nature of the shiur. The fact that it's a shiur hamuad earlier can't be proof for its status now. Now go back to its innocent status. A regular shiur does not gore. This is a regular shiur. It gored 3 times. By him it gored 3 times. Now it's by a new owner. Go back to its original status. Muad l'shabbosos einay muad li'yamosachad. Muad by him doesn't mean you're muad by him. So by the new owner he's a shiur tam until it's established that here too he's a shiur hamuad. Now, we know the Rambam's great foundation, the Rambam's axiom at the end of Hilchos Tmura, that roiv dinei ha'Torah and el sakin hadeyis liyasher hamais, meaning that most laws of Torah are not just laws that deal with technical, physical circumstances, but their ambition is also l'sakin hadeyis, to rectify our perspectives liyasher hamais, and to rectify our actions. Which means, as explained in many Sfarim, that each halacha, in addition to having its literal, physical meaning, also possesses a metaphysical meaning. Each halacha, even a halacha that's connected to a physical bull, goring another physical bull, and the amount of money that you are responsible to pay for the loss, that halacha also can be explained and understood on a metaphysical level, on a spiritual level, on an allegorical level, understanding this law from a psychological, emotional, and spiritual perspective. So in that sikha, in that talk, the Rebbe continued explaining this halacha of Rishus Mishana, this law of the change in the nature of the bull by changing domains, also from a psychological, personal, and spiritual level as it reflects our own lives, our own journeys, and our own struggles. So in addition to the concrete physical interpretation, we also have the psychological and spiritual rendition. In fact, this is one of the primary functions of the literature we call Pnimiyus HaTorah, Kabbalah and Hasidus Jewish mysticism, to explain the metaphysical meaning behind each law, behind each mitzvah in the Torah, in Chumash, in the Talmud, in the Gemara, and so on and so forth. How can we understand the above-mentioned set of laws in our personal lives? For this, we of course must explore who is this bull, who is this shiur that we are addressing in our personal lives. We know who the shiur is in the literal meaning. It's a bull that I own or that you own. It's a dog that I own or that you own, or it's another animal that you or I own. But who is the shiur on a psychological level? Each of us possesses an animal within, an earthly, mundane, and biological consciousness that seeks self-preservation and self-gratification. From the Jewish perspective, unlike some other traditions, the human animal is not seen as inherently evil and destructive. It is potentially destructive, but it is not inherently destructive. Originally, when we're born, the animal within our psyche is innocent. It's even cute, like a cute little puppy. Its primary goal is to preserve its existence, to gratify its natural quests, to enjoy a good and comfortable life. It doesn't seek truth. It doesn't transcend itself yearning for the truth of life. It seeks self-preservation and self-gratification. It can be very cute. It can be very enjoyable. It can even sometimes be noble, if that serves its self-preservation and self-gratification. But it needs to be educated. It needs to be challenged. It needs to be disciplined. It needs to be refined. If not, the cute, innocent animal can become a self-centered beast. The beast can turn into a monster, prone to destroy itself, to destroy others in its quest for self-enhancement, self-aggrandizement, and self-preservation. So when we talk about the shiur, the inner animal, the inner bull, this bull can operate on many different levels. This bull can be extremely innocent. The bull can be extremely violent. Some people's animals become at one point or another damaging forces. They can cause pain and disaster to somebody else. But here there are two categories in the human animal. There is what we call a shiur tam and what we call in halacha a shiur hamuad. There is the human animal whose moments of aggression, whose moments of goring are seen as unusual deviations. And then there are those human animals whose destructive patterns, unfortunately, are defined as common behavior. There are those cases in which the human animal is more or less moral and decent. Once in a while, randomly, arbitrarily, unusually, it performs an act of destruction. Here the Torah says we must be more understanding of the owner of the animal. True, nobody is entitled to gore or bite another human being. Yet, practically speaking, we need to remember that even the most gentle husband could lose himself and raise his voice in rage. And even the most loving wife may, in a moment of excessive stress, make an obnoxious comment. It's painful. Amends must be made, but it's not the end of the world. To be a human being means to stumble. To be a human being means to make mistakes, to fail. Sometimes life throws us a curveball. We're caught in surprise and we react unnaturally. Normally you know your husband. He's a fine man. He's an edel man. He's a refined human being. But it's been a very, very stressful day. He's gotten a few curveballs that day in the office. He comes home and he may express himself in a way that is unnatural to how you know him. Or conversely with the wife towards the husband. Sometimes very loving parents who love their children to death, who nurture their children with dignity in a healthy and productive way. But they also have their sour moments. They also have their difficult moments, and they deviate. This is true about people of all ages and all different types of situations. Sometimes life gets very stressful. Sometimes things are very complicated. Sometimes we lose ourselves for whatever reason, and we're not sober. And we can do things that are an aberration of what we ourselves know about ourselves. This we still call a shiur tam. You gored, you're accountable, you have to pay, but we appreciate the fact that it was a deviation. It's not natural behavior. And the Torah says we have to respect that, we have to be sensitive to that, and we have to understand that. As long as the offender acknowledges his or her wrongdoing, accepts accountability for it, understanding and forgiveness should follow. Nobody is perfect. Everyone, I'm not going to say is entitled, but ein tzaddik ba'aretz asher ya'aseh tov v'lo yachta. A mensch is not a mensch. There's an expression in Yiddish, a mensch is not a mensch, and amol das eichenish, right? A human being is sometimes a human being, a human being is a human being, and sometimes he's not even that. These things are expected. Forgiveness should follow if the person stands up to it, says, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, it was a difficult moment, I'm in a lousy mood, and so on and so forth. Now there is a shiur. If the incidents of abuse, if the obnoxiousness, if the aggression persists, if the husband is continually shouting at his spouse, it wasn't a one-time occurrence, it happened 2 times, it was a very difficult day, which is not good. A bull should never, you should never gore another person, but you're still a shiur tam. If it's 3 times, if when he comes home he starts shouting at his spouse, if when he comes home he starts shouting at his children, if a person who's in a leadership position, we see continuously, once, twice, 3 times, is shattering the lives of people under his control. If somebody is continuously abusing employees, if a wife is continuously being selfishly absorbed in herself and obnoxious to the husband or to the children, same with a teacher, and the same in any other form of relationship. If the anger, if the rage, if the selfishness, if the obnoxiousness, if the aggression, if the insensitivity, if the shouting persists and continues, this behavior can't be condoned. We're dealing here now with an animal that turned into a destructive beast. It must be stopped immediately. You're not a shiur tam anymore. You're a shiur hamuad. Now we have to take the bull by its horns, no pun intended. Now it's a shiur hamuad, it's a shiur tam. They tell a story, a Chelm story. There was a Jew from Chelm who decided to go visit the big city, Warsaw. Chelm is a city in Poland, so from Chelm he would go to the Polish city of Warsaw. So he's walking to Warsaw, and on the way he suddenly sees what we would call today train tracks. But in Chelm they had no train, so he's unfamiliar with train tracks. But he sees that there are iron tracks on the ground, so it's more convenient to walk on them rather than to walk in the mud and in the gravel. So he walks on these tracks. As he's walking on the tracks, suddenly he hears a tiny, small voice. He turns around. He doesn't see anything. He continues walking. And now he hears the voice a little louder. He turns around and he sees this little thing moving. It's distant. It looks to him like some type of little animal that's approaching him. So, unbashfully, without reflecting twice, he continues to walk. And the voice is becoming louder and louder, and now he turns around. The animal is pretty big, and it's moving towards him. And he obviously assumes when the animal sees him, the animal will, of course, move away, not to bump into him. And it's getting louder and louder, and he turns around, and it's almost in back of him, and he continues walking. And then suddenly, he's thrown away with the wind, and he falls into a pit. He's zerhackt, zerschmettert, verwundet, he's wounded, he's bleeding. A Jew sees him, he picks him up from the pit, he brings him into his home. The poor man was wounded and bleeding. He gives him a new change of clothes, and he says, I'm going to put you up, going to make you a hot cup of tea, so you should be able to refresh your soul and feel a little better. And his host takes the kettle, and he puts in water, and he puts it on the stove, and he puts on the fire. And a few minutes later, from the kettle, and the guest runs over, he sees a bat in the corner of the room, and he comes over to the kettle and he begins bashing the kettle until it's splintered into 1,000 pieces all over the house. So his host says, Ma pishi machatasi, what are you doing? What do you want from my cattle? And he says, you got to get them when they're small and young. Because when this voice becomes bigger and stronger, it will destroy your life. When I heard that little sound, I remembered I had experience. I let it go then, and it almost destroyed my life. It's a chelem story, but it also has a message. There's the shiur tam, and there's the shiur hamuad. When the kettle is, no. But he says, if you let that monster grow in, if you let that shiur grow into a shiur hamuad, if it's now goring once and goring twice and goring 3 times, we're not dealing anymore with an abnormal, unusual behavior, which you're responsible for, but we can appreciate it, we can understand it. Now we're dealing with a natural pattern, a natural behavior. And this is often what we call addiction. Addiction. Addiction is where a human being becomes a shiur hamuad, they become addicted to a certain behavior. And those who have been struck by addiction and then sobered up, or those who have loved ones who have been struck by addiction, know the disasters that result from addiction. Addiction to alcohol, addiction to nicotine, addiction to drugs, chalila, addiction to gambling, addiction to various forms of intimacy, and different types of addictions, addictions to food, addictions to rage. There's also addictions to work. An addiction is where the human animal grows to become a shiur hamuad, not only a shiur tam. And this is expressed in many people's lives on many different levels. And one of the worst things is denial. Denial, they say, is not only a river in Egypt, it's part of people's lives. When a person's negative, immoral, unhealthy, destructive behavior is not a deviation, but it's part of their natural selves now, and they become powerless. They often are powerless to control it. This must be stopped immediately. This must be dealt with and confronted in full intensity. Now you have to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I'm not a shiur tam anymore. I'm a shiur hamuad. What is the path to recovery? 2 roads are available. The first is a rigorous process of self-refinement, in which the animal learns to confront and challenge its deepest fears, its urges, its habits, its inclinations. It learns how to de-beast itself from its abusive character. This is a process that takes rigorous discipline, introspection, analysis, reflection. The animal understands, the human being understands what is driving the shiur hamuad, what is behind the shiur hamuad, and attempts to heal. This is a powerful process, a very deep process, through which slowly the animal can be de-beasted and revert back to a shiur tam. But here we're introduced to another path to recovery. And that is the concept of rishus mishana. Back to the halacha. Remember, when you take your bull, that's a shiur hamuad, and you sell it, or you give it as a gift, transferring it from one domain to another domain, without any other work, that in itself changes the shiur, and it's a shiur tam. What does this mean psychologically? Even before you manage to work through all of the dark chambers of your wild animal, even before you manage to work through all the currents and forces behind these habits, behind these inclinations, behind these urges, Yiddishkeit presents us with another alternative in our path to recovery. Change the jurisdiction of the animal. What does it mean to change the jurisdiction of the animal? It means the person indeed did not work with the animal to refine it. But what he did do was, he changed his jurisdiction. He changed his rishus. By submerging himself in a world of goodness, by submerging himself in the world of Torah, by submerging himself in the world of godliness and of holiness and of sanctity, by moving away from the darkness that engulfs his life and throwing himself into another domain, even if he did not work through and sift through all of the darkness, that in itself gives the animal a new ownership. That in itself gives his behemoth, his shiur, a new bailus, a new jurisdiction. That itself helps to make the shiur hamur, the shiur tam. By Chassidim, they used to tell a story that the Alter Rebbe was once leaving Mezrich. Mezrich was the city, is the city in Ravna where his Rebbe, his teacher, the Mezritcher Maggid Rav Dov Ber lived, and Alter Rebbe was once leaving Mezrich to go back home. And the son of the Mezritcher Maggid, Reb Avram HaMalach, as he was known, Reb Avram the angel, came to say goodbye, to escort him. As the Alter Rebbe was entering into the coach, the Alter Rebbe was examining the horses, I guess to see if they're fine to go. So Reb Avram HaMalach, they say, turned to the Alter Rebbe and he said, "Far, far, guck nicht auf the Pferd. You go and go, do not gaze at the horses." And Chassidim said that what Rabbi Rambam HaMalach was actually communicating to him was not an instruction about the technical journey. He was rather giving him an aderech in avodah, an approach in avodah Hashem. Sometimes you don't have the luxury, sometimes you don't have the power, sometimes you don't have the time, sometimes you don't have the energy to study your horse, to study the fair, to study the shiur, and to understand the dynamics behind it becoming a shiur hamuad. Is it a hopeless situation? No. Far, far. Although you know that there's a part that's very unrefined, and there's a part that's even dangerous. The very transferring yourself, throwing yourself into another world, filling up your days and nights with productive things, with holy things, with oisiyus haTorah and oisiyus haTefillah. Practically speaking, this person dedicates time every day to learn, and to learn meticulously and diligently, and throws himself into a world of holiness, puts his life and his energy into helping other people, into Torah and mitzvahs, into serving Hashem. He fills his or her life with light. That itself changes the shiur. Why? It's shocked. You didn't do anything with the shiur. It's shocked. A new system, a new environment, a new energy. That itself, indirectly, without a conscious direct effort, could change the shiur. To give you the words that Rebbe said in that sikha on the fourth night of Sukkot, he says, what does it mean to take your animal and give it to a new owner? It means take your animal and say, you know, what was. Now we're starting all over again. We have a new owner. What do we mean we have a new owner? It says the Baal Shem Tov says that Hashem creates the world every moment anew. So right now you were created, I were created, we have a new owner. Our owner just created us. The Baal Shem Tov says, the Alter Rebbe quotes it in the second section of Tanya in the first chapter, Shara Yichud, when we were just created. So we were now created anew, and hence we have a new owner because we are new entities. New. The Mishnah says, Kol ma shebara Kadosh Baruch Hu ba'olam lebraya ela l'chvayde. Whatever God created in the world, He created only to express His glory, to express godliness. So He tells the animal, we were just created anew. How? L'chvayde. To reflect godliness. So if there's something in your life that's not l'chvayde, that's not reflecting godliness, it's not you. It's not your nature. It's an aberration of you. Sure, you can get into pilpulim and debates with your animal. The animal will talk about the past and get you stuck in the past and analyze the past. And it's true, we know that what was. But this is the approach. You tell the animal what was. Right now we have a new owner and we're beginning to reflect it. Sometimes you need the first path. But the second path is very powerful. It's the path of Rishus Mashana. The Rebbe writes in Likutei Torah in Shir HaShirim, The Maimer Ketzad Merakdin Lifnei Akala, this was the argument with the Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. The Mishnah, the Gemara says in Masechta Ksubos in Perek Sheni, Ketzad Merakdin Lifnei Akala, how do we dance in front of the bride? Beis Shammai Yomrim Kala Kamoy Shehi, Beis Hillel Yomrim Kala Nova Chasuda. The school of Shammai says, how do you dance in front of the bride? You praise the bride according to the praises that are appropriate to her. Kala Kamoy Shehi. Praise and extol the virtues that the bride has. Beis Hillel says, no, Kala Nova Chasuda. In front of each bride, dance and say the same words. She's beautiful and gracious. So Beis Shammai criticizes Beis Hillel, Midvar Sheker Tirchok. You're lying. What happens if this bride is not beautiful and not gracious? How can you say about every bride, Kala Nova Chasuda? And Beis Hillel counterattacks Beis Shammai and says, no, it's the proper thing. You could say Kala Nova Chasuda. What is the argument? So the Alter Rebbe in Likutei Torah and Shir Hashirim in this Maimer says a gewaldige word, and it's based on these two approaches. Ketzad Merakdin Lifnei Hakala. Kala, every Jew is called the Kala, the bride of Hashem. Kala from the word Klois HaNefesh, which means the yearning and the passion and the pining of the soul to connect to truth, to connect to transcendence, to connect to God, to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Ketzad Merakdin Lifnei Hakala, how do you dance in front of the Kala to bring out the Klois HaNefesh, to bring out the inspiration from a Jewish soul? How do you do it? Beis Shammai Yomrim Kala Kamois Shehi. Beis Shammai says, you have to deal with the Kala Kamois Shehi. You have to ruthlessly and honestly examine who this Kala really is, who this person really is. It has its virtues and it has its flaws. And you have to praise it and bring out its virtues based on who it really is. Don't live in fantasy world. Don't run away from the darkness. Confront the demons. Confront the skeletons. Confront the shadows. Kala Kamois Shehi. Deal with the Kala as she is. Don't run away. Don't close your eyes. That is how you can ultimately bring out the beauty of the Kala. If you clean up the dirt, if you're ready to challenge your instincts and challenge your habits and challenge your addictions and understand them and appreciate them thoroughly, that's how Merakdin Lifnei Hakala. Beis Hillel's approach was different. Kala Nova Chasuda. When you approach the Kala, you date the Kala with beauty. You date the Kala with chesed. Overwhelm your life with beauty. Overwhelm your life with grace and kindness. Indulge yourself. Submerge yourself in a more refined world, in a godly world, in a beautiful world, in a gracious world, in a pure world. That itself will liberate the Kala already from its negative qualities. It's two approaches. La'asid Lavoi, the Arizal says, the Alter Rebbe brings in the Likutei Torah, Parshas Korach, it says in Kabbalah, that the Arizal says, La'asid Lavoi, Mashiach comes, halacha ke Beis Shammai. The verdict will be like Beis Shammai in all of his arguments against Hillel. Now, these days, halacha is usually ke Beis Hillel, the law is like Beis Hillel. Shammai comes from the word evaluation, Sham, Hasham Baruch Yosef. Shammai demanded absolute accountability and evaluation. Shammai represents Kabbalistically Midas HaGvura. Hillel comes from the word Bahalonera Areshay, light. Hillel represents Midas HaChesed. Beis Shammai says, evaluate the person exactly and do not compromise on anything. A much higher level indeed, very thorough level. Often that we have to wait la'asid love for halacha ke Beis Shammai. Now we say halacha ke Beis Hillel, Kala Nova Chasuda, and these are the two approaches how to reorient a shur hamuad back to a shur tam. One is to rigorously de-beast the animal, and the second is far guck nicht auf der Pferd, reshus mishana, changing the jurisdiction of the animal. Take your animal and surrender it, submit it to the property of God. Even before elevating your animal to a higher realm, surrender it to a higher reality. You know you're powerless. Surrender it to the higher power, to Hashem. Take your rage, take your addictions, take your obnoxiousness, take your depression, take your fear, submit them to God. A dangerous beast may turn into a delightful soul. Have a wonderful evening.